Hey guys, my name is April from Unsolicited Plant Talks, and welcome back to our channel. Today, I wanted to do a propagation of this mama plant right here. This is Hoya latifolia from Sarawak. As you guys know, there's different kinds of latifolia. This is one of those varieties. Here's the flower for this specific one. This is Sarawak pink. As you can see on the petals and on the bloom, it has a little bit of pink on it. So I wanted to show you guys our process of how we propagate our plants and how we take care of them after starting the propagation. So before I started this video, I had put everything that I needed together so that I don't have to go back and forth and look for the items. Number one, obviously, we need to grab whatever plant we're gonna try to propagate. Like I said on this video, this is gonna be for Hoya latifolia from Sarawak. And it is this bushy mother plant right here. Now, you can grab whatever medium you are trying to use, but as you guys know, we use coco husk right here. This is our blend. We usually mix our own. So there's a little bit of coco coir and coco husk in here. However, I also had grabbed, we have this handy dandy container right here. This is pure coir right here, as you can see, because after propagation or after putting all the cuttings in the medium that we are using, we usually top it off with this so that it stays a little bit more moist longer and the top part dries faster so that gnats don't go in and have a party and eating my roots before they actually can support the cutting itself. So we're gonna go in depth with that. I also grabbed my pins. I'm gonna show you guys how to use this, or at least how we use them. What we used to use are these pins. Honestly, we still use them here and there. These are called floral pins. We usually use these to keep the propagation or the propagated stems in the pot or in the medium stable. I'll go in depth about that in a little bit. But I know that a lot of people don't like this, especially when it starts rusting. A lot of people don't like the look, so we started using these beautiful strawberry pins is what they're called, and I'll show you guys how to use that and why we started using those. The very first thing that we do is we grab our tools to chop our mother plants. We have these shears. I got them from Amazon, nothing specific, nothing special. I really like these because they're curved, so whenever you try to go into areas that are a little bit harder to get into, it's a little bit better because it curves right there. You can see how thin the blade is, so it just helps whenever we're trying to get into hard spaces to get into. So this is our first item. The second item is a spray bottle that contains a freshly mixed Physin. Sometimes we just use 99% isopropyl alcohol, but most of the time we use Physin just because we have big bottles of them, and I think they're specifically for plants and they work a little bit better. So we usually grab our shears, we just grab our Physin, we spray it a couple of times, and we are good to go. Why do we do this? This is to prevent any contamination. We spray our tools beforehand just in case we used it on a plant that could possibly have fungal infection or anything or any sort of diseases. This way, it disinfects our tools and we don't transfer it to the next plant that we're gonna be using the shears with, which is, in this case, is gonna be this Hoya latifolia. So I have my tool, I disinfected it, and so now I'm gonna assess my plant and what areas do I wanna cut. We don't cut the plants all the way to the bottom sometimes, especially when it's this big. This is in a 12-inch pot, so this is pretty big right here. I don't know if you guys can see. So this is pretty big. The plant is used to being this big. The roots are massive. They're used to feeding the plant a certain amount of water. So if I chop it all the way down and I continue to water it, normally how I would normally water it, the plant will drink the same amount of water that it's used to be able to support this big of a plant. And because there's nothing to support and the water doesn't have anywhere to go, you're gonna end up, not all the time, but you're most likely going to end up rotting that base cutting. Also, when you chop a plant, it kind of stunts them a little bit. So if you chop it all the way down, you deplete it with the hormones that it needs to grow and It just takes a little bit sometimes to get back to growing again. So is that really bad? Not really. As far as cutting it or chopping it all the way down, that's also not a super bad thing. You can do that. It's not necessarily a no, don't do it. You can do it. We've done it before, but just be mindful that when you water, make sure that you water less frequent and less amount so that the plant doesn't get into shock. All right. With that being said, let's start cutting. This is the plant right here. And I know that I'm not going to cut it all the way down, so I'm going to try to make sure. Now, you don't have to do this, it's just a preference. I'm going to try to cut it where the plant's not going to look so ugly after being chopped. So, yeah, we'll just take out all the unruly ones. First things first, I don't really propagate my cuttings with long vines like this. And that's completely okay if that's what you wanted to do. But personally, I just don't like doing it. If you've watched our other videos, I went over why I don't like doing that. And that is because I want the plants to have the possibility of being bushy. So this is the first thing that I cut. Now, typically, if we have a lot of this specific variety, we toss them, especially if they grow really fast. We just toss these. We don't really need them. Look at this mama plant. I can definitely make better cuttings with leaves there so it can photosynthesize and root faster than these. But you know what? Growing plants from stems are so fun and it is so satisfying. So I'm probably going to save this. I'll show you guys how I propagate this one. So we'll put that aside. So that's the first cut. What other unruly areas do we have here? Although I do have this stem right here, just know that I'm not going to cut this one because I don't have a leaf there that I want to cut anyway, so I'll just let that be so it can keep growing leaves. Let's start from over here since this one's a little bit crazy. Since we're not cutting this one, let's go ahead and tame it as well so that it can grow properly and it doesn't go all over the place. So we'll go ahead and put that there. Also, this is the time that I try to clean up the plant. The plant's not going to die if I cut this leaf and look at this. It just collects, I don't know, dust and water when we water them. Hey, you know what? She can go. I have some yellowing leaves right here. And I know that the health of the plant is not declining, so it could just be from extreme temperatures. I'm also going to be tossing these guys. So bye-bye. Whenever I propagate, I also do a cleanup of the plant. What do we have here? Oh, this one's a good vine. Look how beautiful those leaves are. So let's go ahead and follow that and see where I want to cut all the way down to that. Okay, so we have this really beautiful cutting right here. As you can see, oh, look at her. Isn't that pretty? I would cut the top. This is preference. I would cut that top right there. And then I would get me some good cuttings. I have a leaf, I have a node, and a good amount of stem right here. So we'll go ahead and cut this one. And then cut, cut this one right here. And now I have 3 cuttings. And I've only prepared a whole tray of 15 pots. Let's start with 15 cuttings for this one. So there's 3. This one's not too pretty. We'll go ahead and cut that one. So I have 3. You know what? I really want to cut this, but man, it's so pretty. Let's cut this one first. So we have our next cutting right here. So we'll cut again. I have a node. I have my leaves. And I have my stem. I'm contemplating, should I leave the stem? Nah, that one I'm not going to propagate. We have long stems already that we can propagate. How many do we have? I have 6 so far. This one's looking a little wonky, but it's got a flower, so we won't do that one. This one's not the prettiest. I don't typically only cut the nice leaf ones, although it's nice, but I also cut off these yellowing ones right here. And the reason being, of course, I'm not going to ship this out like this. This is still a really good cutting. You got 2 leaves, you got a node, you got a good amount of stem, although the leaves are ugly. And what I typically do is I just cut off the leaves. So let's say I like the bigger leaf better. So let's go ahead and cut this off. I'm going to propagate this once this is rooted and starts growing new leaves. this leaf has got to go because she ain't the prettiest. Let's go ahead and flip the plant. Let's grab some more cuttings over here. Oh, she's a little wonky over here. She's also very pretty. Do I want to cut this? No, this is where the flower is. Oh, but there's also a lot of flowers right here. Maybe we do that one. It's a little funny looking down here, and it's a little stressful. So we're gonna clean this up a little bit, and we're gonna get a good amount of cuttings from this side. It's just giving somebody a haircut. Check this one out. Right there. Look how big these leaves are. They're so cool. I love these, and they're so easy to grow too. So here are other cuttings. We got some peduncles up there. Maybe I'll leave this stem right here because it's got peduncles, and I think it's really cute. So chop right here. That's one. Sometimes you will have cuttings that look like this. So I typically keep only one node. But as you can see right here, there's a node right here that doesn't have leaves. I'm just gonna leave that as a stem right there. So I'm gonna chop it right here. So technically I have two nodes right here. There's a big possibility that once this is rooted and starts growing, we can grow some more leaves from this side and also from this node right here. That's a good cutting. And then for this one, this actually also has multiple nodes because you have a node right here and then you have a node right there, node right here. Do I want to keep this? No, I actually don't want to keep this one because I think it's gonna grow wonkily. So I'm gonna leave this baby by itself. Okay, let me just count how many I have already. I need 5 more. Oh, this one's good. Let's chop this one. Look at this one. You see how there's a wonky leaf right here paired with this leaf right here? I'm just gonna chop this off. I don't need that. Great. So chop that. 1. Here's our second node. 2. And as for this one, oh, she wonky too. I'm gonna chop this off. Let's grow some new beautiful leaves. I don't mind waiting. Maybe this one looks good. Oh, and also another thing that I wanted to mention. Sometimes your leaves are gonna be upside down, especially if they are growing downwards. And it is very important to propagate them with the proper orientation. Let's say this leaf is upside down and it's not the prettiest looking. And let's cut this off. And I have a cutting like this. If I propagate it upside down like this, as you can see, the leaf naturally grows this way. That's where the node is. This is where the new growth is going to be coming from. If I propagate it upside down, you're just risking the plant not rooting and rotting before it actually starts rooting. Will it start rooting from right here? Yes, it would. But typically, they die off from the top area down instead. So I usually make sure that my stems are propagated in the right orientation so I have the maximum chances that this is going to root properly before it actually dies. So we're gonna chop that off. And yep, this is a really good cutting. I think I got all of my cuttings, but that was a really good example. Let me go ahead and actually find a different example for you so that's a little bit clearer. This is a Hoya lucardenasiana. I picked this one because not only that it's gonna be a really good example, but also look at that flower. Isn't that pretty? It's actually, uh-oh, this one's an older one. They're all fallen off. Okay, so let's pretend we are propagating this guy. And let me actually make a cutting so that at least I can show it to you and a little bit better explain it. So we're gonna make a cutting, and as you guys know, like I said, I usually give myself just one node, although this one has 2 nodes. So the plant was growing this way, and typically the leaves orient where the sun is coming from. And because the sun is coming from the top, then the leaves are obviously turning to go look up that way. If the plant is trellised, this is our newest growth. This is where the new growth's coming from. The new leaves are coming from. If we have it growing this way, the leaves would be like this, because the top of the leaves are trying to face where the sunlight's coming from. So because that is not the case, our cutting now looks like this in the proper orientation. Now, the new growths are going to be coming out of here. Some people propagate it this way because it looks prettier, and I totally agree. If I can have all of my cuttings look like this, that would be amazing. But I know that this area right here will rot or will die off faster than this because this is the bottom part of the cutting. I know better to propagate it this way so that I have better chances of rooting this before it actually dies. We also have this in our blog, so if you guys wanted to see more examples, that's going to be a really good one to read. But yeah, so what I would do is I would propagate it this way, and once it's rooted and growing, don't worry, because over time, these leaves, like I said, it always follows where the sun is coming from. So over time, these leaves will actually very slowly orient themselves the proper way, which is like that. That's a really good example. I can't really show it with the Sarawak because no matter which orientation you do it, it still looks pretty. So this one probably is the better one. Here's my tray refilled with our mix. You don't have to use this mix. If you have a preferred medium, you can use whatever medium that you want as long as it's airy. It can be well hydrated, but also does not stay wet or moist for really long periods of time. So with that being said, I recommend not using pure soil for propagation. Although it does work, you just decrease the chances of your plants rooting before it starts rotting. You can use a stick, you can use like this one, anything that will help you poke a hole. So we pre-poke our holes like this so that when we insert our cuttings, we don't have to jam it in there and possibly bending or hurting the stem that we need for propagation. We pre-poke them just like that. And then if you watch our last video, we use rooting hormones. This is what we're currently using. So this is what you'll see in this container right here that we're using. And I usually just put it like that. So I put it on the side like this because if you take your cutting, it's just so much easier than if I were to try to scoop everything from the bottom. So we take our cutting like this, and then we insert them into our medium. And what we do is we use these guys to hold it in place. Now, this is actually a really good example. So this cutting seems to be a lot longer than what I would like it to be. So I would try to orient it to where the cutting is not wonkily looking. I always try to think ahead what these plants are going to look like once they start rooting. So because it is a little bit long, what I typically do is I just cut a little bit off, just like that. And I had jammed it in there so many times. I'm gonna put more rooting hormones in there and jam it again, okay? To hold it in place, we use these pins and we just put them right here so that the cutting won't be wobbly, and when we water, they stay in place. They don't have roots yet that hold them in place and keep them sturdy. The pins are doing that job for now. I'm going to repeat it with all of my cuttings. I wanted to make a point or note that not all of your propagations need this pin. So this is optional. If you are growing a very stable cutting in a medium, sometimes you don't need the pins. Also, if you bottom water or if you don't water like us with a high pressure hose, you don't really need to pin them down. The reason being is that whenever we water and there's a lot of pressure from the hose, we typically push the cutting around by the water unintentionally, and they start rising to the top. And when they rise to the top, because we have hundreds and hundreds of them, sometimes we don't notice them, and they don't root because the stem is not in the medium. So that's the reason why we use the pins. Do you have to use pins? Not really, but I like the extra support. Look how beautiful this cutting is. So obviously I'm hoping that I'm not gonna lose These leaves during the propagation, this is going to take a little bit longer to root, but that's completely okay because it's so worth it. But sometimes they do tend to yellow and crease to where I can't really salvage them. There's a possibility that this yellows and I have to chop it and just wait for new growth. But as for right now, hey, I'm going to hope that this is going to live because look at her. Now that I have all of my propagation right here, what I do next is I top it all off. So it's not too much, but I top it all off with Pure 4. This is, again, unnecessary if your conditions are ideal. But whenever we're propagating any plant, for that matter, because they don't have roots yet, or when they start growing roots, they're very delicate and tiny. Gnats really love to party in these mediums. And it's not just this, it also applies to any medium that you're using because gnats don't discriminate. Anything that's moist and there's roots to be eaten, they're there. And it's not just roots. Sometimes if they stay too moist and your leaves are a little softer, these are a little thick already because they're mature, but if you have newer leaves, they will also eat that. Yeah. And because we have a lot of plants that we propagate here and we don't watch them one by one every day, this is another line of defense that we use against gnats. I put the core on top and cover as many entry points as I can, as much as possible. So the top will actually dry much faster than the inside because with the inside or the underneath of this topping, it's where you want it to stay moist so that the plants can root faster. But with the core, even though it does stay moist, so it holds moisture underneath, it also dries fast on the top. And if it's dry on the top, gnats are not going to be able to lay their eggs and they're not going to be able to continue their life cycle that way. Yep, that is the reason why we do this. After I do all of that on the top, I know it's a little messy, but don't worry because when we water, it will all be washed away. The next important part that we usually do after this is we introduce our friendly bugs. These are our fungus gnat predator. I get this from Arbico. Arbico is always very good answering our questions. When we started looking for ways to biologically control pests like gnats, they're very responsive. They know their stuff. So whenever I do this, I usually just mix them well a little bit. And then I grab a little bit, a small amount, and then I check and make sure that they're still alive. I just get a pinch of this baby and I just put them on top. Just normally, I would tell our customers that when I propagate Hoyas, I don't like burying the node, the only node that I have, because there's a big possibility that it will rot it, okay? However, the reason why it's looking like it's buried over here is because everything on top are just so fluffy. Once we water these guys, all of these fill in the cracks, so those nodes end up being on top again anyway. So I'm not really worried. I put a little bit of friendly bogos right here, and we're almost done. The biggest thing that we also do here, Anna already pre-wrote it for me. She's so sweet. So this is our tags. We make sure we tag them, what the names of the plants are, and we also write when we propagated them so that we can watch them closely. It's been 3 months, why is it still not rooting? Or it's been only 2 weeks, it's rooted so fast. So what does that mean when it comes to updating the website and planning how many to propagate in the future? So that's what we do here. We water them right after we do this. If you're propagating at home, make sure that you put these propagations in a well-lit area, but no direct sun. And if you are propagating small plants, humidity will definitely help. So you can use a dome, you can use anything to keep the humidity in. Otherwise, that's it. Pretty fairly easy. I think the hardest part of propagating is waiting and being patient, right? But also, that is the fun part of it. Now that we're done with that, as for the sticks, this is what I typically do. Now, I'm not overly worried about these guys. If they don't live, they don't. If they do, hey, wonderful, we're gonna have more plants. So let me just grab a little bit more of my mix right there. I grab more mix for me. I am going to chop the sticks. I chop them to my liking as long as I follow the rules of at least one node and a long stem. Obviously, we don't have any leaves here, so I'll just let that be. I'm probably gonna just chop this down right here. Here's my first node. And for this one, since they are my experiments, or I don't think these guys are gonna go out or be sold anytime soon, I just typically use the sticks to be my mother plants. And yeah, I chop them however I want. Chop them right here. I don't expect all of them to live. Like this one's a little soft because this is the newest one. I don't expect this one to live. But am I gonna give up on it? Not really. Put them all together. Oh, this one's a little too long. Let's go ahead and chop this one. Don't forget your rooting powder. There we go. And then put it in my future mother pot. Put them right there. Add a little bit more soil, like that. And for this one, I don't really top it off with anything. And this is it. I grab, and this is very important for me because if I don't do it now, I'll forget, I'll never do it, and I will have a pot of unknown plants. So I grab my tag, I write latifolia from Sarawak, and my date. Here's my tag. Oops. I have this one right here, latifolia from Sarawak, so I know exactly which clone this is. I got my date, I put that in, I put my plugs right here, and yeah, we'll see how many we grow from this spot. This is gonna be our new mama plant. So that's how we propagate our plants here in the greenhouses. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. If there's something that you would like to share with me so I can better my process, please do tell underneath, comment down below. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.